Midnight Zephyr presents this story. Your feedback helps shape the next horror. What do you want to hear next? And subscribe so you don't miss the next night of nightmares. In this reimagined psychological horror thriller, protagonist Sarah Thompson, a reclusive artist recovering from a traumatic divorce, relocates to a quaint Victorian house in the misty hills of Northern California. The story unfolds over a single foggy weekend in early spring, when the town hosts its annual Cherry Blossom Festival, a once vibrant event now faded due to recent storms and local apathy. Sarah first notices two shadowy figures in hooded jackets loitering near her overgrown garden during a morning walk with her rescue dog Max. Dismissing them as festival stragglers, she returns inside, but unease builds as strange occurrences mount. Misplaced items, faint whispers outside her windows, and anonymous notes hinting at buried secrets from her ex-husband's shady business dealings. New characters include nosy neighbor Mr. Harlan, who shares town legends of vanished visitors, and Sarah's estranged sister, Lena, who arrives unexpectedly, adding familial tension. The plot escalates with a midnight intrusion attempt, where one figure distracts at the door while the other breaches the basement. Twists reveal the intruder's motivation ties to a hidden inheritance Sarah unknowingly possesses, leading to a chase through the fog-shrouded woods. Subplots weave in Sarah's paranoia-fueled visions and a red herring involving a local cult rumor. The narrative builds suspense through fragmented timelines, ending with Sarah unmasking one assailant in a shocking betrayal, but the other vanishes, leaving her questioning reality and safety. Emotional tone preserves isolation and escalating dread, with themes of trust betrayal and unresolved pasts, culminating in an ambiguous resolution where Sarah arms herself for potential return threats. Sarah Thompson stared out the bay window of her new home, the Victorian house perched on the edge of Willow Ridge, a sleepy town nestled in the rolling hills of Northern California. It was early April, and the cherry blossoms should have been in full bloom, painting the landscape in soft pinks and whites. But a relentless series of storms had stripped most trees bare, leaving only skeletal branches clawing at the gray sky. Sarah had moved here 3 months ago, seeking solitude after her messy divorce from David. The house, with its creaky floors and high ceilings, felt like a sanctuary at first, a place to paint, to heal, to forget the accusations and the endless arguments about his business partners, who always seemed to lurk in the shadows of their old life. She sipped her herbal tea, the steam fogging the glass. The festival was starting today, though from what she'd heard at the local market, it was a shadow of its former self. No parades, just a few stalls selling wilted flowers and homemade jams. Sarah wasn't planning to go. Crowds made her anxious now. Instead, she'd sketched the misty hills from her studio upstairs. Max, her scruffy terrier mix she'd adopted from a shelter back in Seattle, scratched at the door, whining for his morning walk. "All right, boy, let's get some fresh air." She clipped on his leash and stepped out into the damp chill. The air smelled of wet earth and distant sea salt, carried up from the coast 20 miles away. The path behind her house wound through a small orchard, now overgrown with weeds since the previous owners had abandoned it years ago. Sarah pulled her sweater tighter as they wandered, Max tugging eagerly ahead. That's when she saw them. Two figures about 50 feet away, standing motionless among the twisted cherry trees. They wore dark hooded jackets, slick with rain, and their faces were obscured by the hoods pulled low. At first, she thought they were locals picking early blooms, but they weren't moving. Just watching. Max growled low in his throat, hackles rising. "Hey there," Sarah called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "You lost? The festival's down in town." The figures didn't respond. One shifted slightly, and for a split second she caught a glimpse of pale skin under the hood, maybe a chin or a cheek. Then, as if synchronized, they turned and melted into the thicker fog rolling in from the valley. Sarah stood frozen, heart pounding. It was probably nothing. Hikers, maybe, caught off guard. Willow Ridge had trails everywhere, drawing weekend wanderers despite the weather. She shook it off and tugged Max back toward the house. Inside, she locked the door, a habit from city living, and busied herself in the kitchen. But the image lingered, those hoods, the stillness. It reminded her too much of David's old associates, The ones who'd show up unannounced, eyes always scanning. No, she told herself. That's paranoia talking. David was gone, the divorce finalized. She was safe here. By midday, the fog had thickened, blanketing the town in a muted hush. Sarah climbed to her studio, a converted attic with slanted windows offering views of the hills. She set up her easel, mixing paints to capture the ethereal grayness outside. But her brushstrokes felt off, distracted. Max paced below, occasionally barking at nothing. A knock echoed from downstairs. Sarah jumped, paint splattering her jeans. Who could that be? She wasn't expecting anyone. Wiping her hands, she descended the stairs, Max at her heels. Through the peephole, she saw an older man with a weathered face and a flannel shirt holding a basket. She opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Morning, ma'am, or afternoon, I suppose." He smiled warmly, revealing a gap-toothed grin. "Name's Harlan. Live next door. Well, down the lane a bit. Brought some preserves from the festival. Figured a new neighbor might appreciate them." Sarah relaxed slightly. "Oh, thank you, I'm Sarah, that's kind of you." Harlan handed over the basket filled with jars of cherry jam and a few wilted blossoms. "Town's not what it used to be. Storms ruined the crop this year, but we make do." His eyes flicked past her into the house. "You alone here? Big place for one person." "Just me and my dog." She kept her tone light, but something in his gaze unnerved her. Nosy or just friendly? "Well, if you need anything, holler. Been here 40 years. Know all the shortcuts and the stories." He chuckled. "Like the old blossom ghosts. Folks say they wander the orchards on foggy days looking for lost souls." Sarah forced a laugh. "Sounds like a good tale for the festival." "Aye, but mind the paths. Some get turned around in the mist." With a tip of his hat, he ambled off. She closed the door, setting the basket on the counter. Ghosts? Ridiculous. But as she returned to her painting, Harlan's words echoed. The figures in the orchard, could they have been lost? Or something else? The afternoon dragged on. Sarah tried to focus, but her mind wandered to her past. David had been charming at first, a real estate developer with big dreams. But then the debts piled up, the shady deals. She'd discovered emails about investments that sounded more like extortion. When she confronted him, he turned nasty, accusing her of spying. The divorce left her with the house proceeds, enough to buy this place outright. But sometimes, she wondered if his old partners blamed her for his downfall. He'd vanished after the papers were signed, no forwarding address. A sharp bark from Max snapped her back. He was at the window, staring out. Sarah joined him, peering into the fog. Nothing visible, but a chill ran down her spine. She drew the curtains and turned on lights, even though it was only 3 p.m. As evening approached, the festival's distant sounds filtered through, faint music, laughter carried on the wind. Sarah decided to call her sister, Lena. They hadn't spoken in months, not since the divorce when Lena took David's side, calling Sarah overdramatic. But isolation was getting to her. The phone rang twice before Lena answered. "Sarah? Everything okay?" "Yeah, just settling in. How are you?" "Busy as ever. Work's insane. You sound tense. What's up?" Sarah hesitated. "Nothing. Saw some weird people in the yard today. Probably nothing." Lena sighed. "You're in the middle of nowhere. Of course there are weirdos. Why'd you move there anyway? Come back to the city." "I needed space from everything." "From David, you mean? Look, he was no saint, but you pushed him away." The old argument flared. He was lying, Lena. About money, about everything. "Whatever. Just be careful. I might visit soon, check on you." They hung up, the conversation leaving Sarah more unsettled. Why did Lena always defend him? She shook it off and prepared dinner. A simple salad, eaten at the kitchen table with Max begging for scraps. Night fell quickly, the fog turning opaque under the moonless sky. Sarah locked up, double-checking windows and doors. She settled in the living room with a book, but her eyes kept drifting to the windows. Around 8 p.m., a knock rattled the front door. Max erupted in barks. Sarah's heart raced. She approached cautiously, flipping on the porch light. Through the peephole, two figures in hooded jackets stood there, rain dripping from their forms. "Who is it?" she called, voice trembling slightly. A muffled voice replied, male, youngish. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am. Our car's stuck down the road. Phone's dead. Can we use yours to call a tow?" Sarah paused. It sounded plausible. The roads were slick from the storms, but those hoods, the same as the orchard figures. "Hold on." She grabbed her phone, dialing the local garage instead. But before she could connect, another knock, insistent. "Please, it's pouring out here." Max growled fiercely. Sarah backed away. "I've called for help. They'll be here soon." Silence, then footsteps retreating. She peeked out. They were gone, swallowed by the fog. Relief washed over her, mixed with doubt. Was that them from earlier? Why her house? She texted Lena. "Weird night, strangers at door, all good now." Lena replied instantly. "Lock up tight, coming tomorrow." Sarah nodded to herself. Good. Company would help, but sleep evaded her that night. She tossed in bed, Max curled at her feet. Around midnight, a soft scratch at the window made her bolt upright. Wind? Or something else? The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight piercing the fog. Max whined for his walk. She leashed him and stepped out, scanning the yard. Footprints in the mud, 2 sets leading from the orchard to her door, then away. Her stomach knotted. Not imagination. She called the sheriff's office, reporting suspicious activity. The dispatcher promised a patrol car. While waiting, she explored the basement, a dusty space she'd barely touched. Boxes from the move stacked high. As she shifted one, an envelope fell out, addressed to David, postmarked from Willow Ridge. What? How? She tore it open. Inside, a note. "The debt isn't paid. We know where she is." Terror gripped her. David's past here? The figures? Were they collectors? A car pulled up. Not the sheriff. Lena's SUV. Sarah rushed out. "You came early." Lena hugged her. "You sounded scared. What's going on?" Sarah showed the note. Lena's face paled. "David, he borrowed from bad people. I tried to warn you. Why didn't you say?" "I thought it was over." Lena glanced around. "We need to leave." But as they packed, Harlan appeared at the fence. "Trouble, ladies?" "Just visiting," Sarah said tightly. He nodded. "Careful. Festival brings out odd folks, like those 2 I saw sniffing around yesterday." Sarah froze. "You saw them?" "I. Hooded types. Asked about the old house. Said it had history." "What history?" Sarah's mind raced. The house had been cheap. Too cheap. Maybe tied to David's deals. That afternoon, they drove to town for supplies. The festival was underwhelming. Sparse crowds, vendors packing up early. Sarah spotted a stall with local history books. Flipping through one, she found an article. Unsolved disappearance, businessman vanishes after cherry debt scandal. The photo, David's associate, here in Willow Ridge. Back home, tension mounted. Lena cooked dinner, but Sarah couldn't eat. "They want something from me." "We'll figure it out," Lena assured. Night came again, fog denser. A knock at 10 p.m. Max went berserk. Through the peephole, the 2 figures. "Go away," Sarah yelled. "We need to talk," one said. "About David." Lena grabbed a poker from the fireplace. "Call the cops." Sarah dialed 911, but as the operator answered, a crash from the back, the basement window shattering. "They're inside," Sarah whispered. Lena swung the door open, poker ready. Footsteps thumped below. They barricaded the kitchen door, hearts pounding. Sirens wailed in the distance. One intruder ascended the stairs, hooded silhouette in the hall. "Give us the papers, and we leave." "Papers? The note?" Sarah's mind flashed. David's safe, hidden in a box. Inheritance documents, perhaps. Lena charged, swinging. The figure dodged, grabbing her arm. Sarah lunged, Max biting at ankles. Chaos ensued. The second intruder burst in from the front, now unhooded. A young man, early 20s, face twisted in anger. "Stop!" Sarah screamed. "What papers?" "The deed," David hid it here, worth millions in land rights. Land rights? The house sat on valuable property. Cherry orchards with development potential. Police lights flashed. The intruders fled, but one tripped, cuffed by arriving officers. The other vanished into the fog. Interrogation revealed. Hired by David's old partner seeking buried documents. But the escaped one? Still out there. Sarah and Lena sat amid the mess, shaken. "It's not over," Sarah whispered. As dawn broke, a new note on the porch. "We'll be back.